All right, so to just finish this off and kind of keep going, I'm gonna finish these last verses, and then I'm gonna get into kind of some practical points and mindsets that have helped me to continue on in life through sufferings and continue on, basically, being a man and living in this world that we live in, with consideration of all that we go through, right? I had a guy who made a comment on my last video, and I erased it because I don't need that kind of comment. But he commented and said, "Just be confident. Stop crying about things." Well, yeah, in a way, it's like, yeah, just be confident, right? Like, this is like the black pill guys, like say that to a black pill guy, just be confident. Well, a lot more goes into it than just confidence. But it's good to be confident. It's good to. Anyway, I'm gonna get more into it later. But I erased that comment, and I'm not gonna entertain that type of talk on my channel. Like, my channel, I'm not just whining here. Like, this isn't just whining. Like, I talk about issues that men go through. And I try to give practical advice, but a lot of what I do is I just talk about the red pill. So it's not, I don't consider it whining. I mean, when we talk about our issues, it's cathartic. It helps us. It helps me talk about it. And I think it helps guys. It helps my listeners. Oftentimes I have a lot of guys comment and say, "Your channel's awesome. You make great content. Thank you for this. Why haven't I, heard your stuff before?" So it's like, I know I'm not the most amazing motivator. I know I'm not the most amazing talker. And, if I was better, I'd probably have a lot more subscribers and views. But, I get comments like that every once in a while, Thank you. This video really helped me get through a hard time, things like that. And that helps me to keep going. And I don't consider it whining. I mean, we're talking about issues. Men need to talk. Part of the problem, with what men go through is that we're not allowed to talk about it. It's considered gay or weak to talk about our problems as men. The irony is women encourage us to talk. Women are like, why don't guys open up more and be more emotional? It's just, when we talk about issues that we go through with them, they're like, oh, not that kind of talk, right? We don't want to hear that kind of talk. We want you to talk and open up, but we want you to do it how we want you to do it, right? So, nah, man, we need to talk about it. We need to open these issues up so men can get educated, and so men can find a place where they feel like other men are going through the same things they're going through, which is also a part of how to deal with suffering and setbacks, right? Anyway, I'm going to get more into that in a minute, but I'm going to finish these verses because I left off my last video where I was showing you these verses, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm making a point about this world, right? From a biblical perspective. A lot of people, they just don't read the Bible, so they don't have... I feel like if anybody reads the Bible at length, like if you read it more than just like, oh, what's this about? And, read it and then toss it. A lot of times people don't even read it. I was reading a verse that says Satan binds the minds of unbelievers so that they don't get saved, right? He kind of controls them. And a lot of times from a Christian perspective, how people get saved is through a lot of prayer. People pray for people heavily because it's just like the Matrix. I remember when I was 19, and I think I was like, no, even before 19, I must have been 16, 17 when the Matrix came out. I think it came out in 1999, if I'm not mistaken. I watched two movies that really, and I talked about this before in some of my old podcasts, but two movies that really opened me up to the red pill and kind of showed me reality, the real reality. The first one was Fight Club, and the second one was The Matrix. Those two movies, which came out pretty close to each other, maybe even in the same year, right around that time, the year 2000. Anyway, I watched The Matrix, and I've always enjoyed The Matrix, because it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor for waking up, for becoming red-pilled, and that's where we get the term red pill, is from The Matrix. You take the red pill, and then you see the real truth, and you can never go back. You're changed. Right? Because you take the blue pill, or you take the blue pill, and you stay a sucker. You stay a person who's on the plantation. You stay, in that phony reality. And a lot of guys are there. A lot of guys are in that phony reality, and it sucks. Taking the red pill is a hard lonely walk in a way. You know, you don't sell your soul in that way. You retain your soul, right? People who have taken the blue pill and they stay in the matrix, they're selling their soul, and they'll never experience what guys who walked away from the matrix experience. Now, my road has been a long, hard one. These last, almost 20 years now, since I really, really left the matrix consciously, knew what I was doing, consciously left it. Very lonely road and very hard road, a lot of suffering, right? I stopped conforming, and I was thinking about this the other night too. I had these great friends in high school who I thought were my great friends, but then I got into some trouble and I realized a lot of these guys, they're just acquaintances, and which kind of broke my heart to think about, because I spent a lot of intimate time with some of these guys, but when it comes down to it, people are selfish, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's okay to be selfish, but I had all these nice friends. The blue pill world is kind of safe. It's kind of comfy, right? It's kind of like, okay, but I was trying to conform, right? I was trying to conform. And then, I saw this movie, The Matrix, and I really left, and it helped me to leave psychologically, but willfully. It helped me to willfully leave. It's like, yeah, I need to leave this life that I'm living. I'm trying to find acceptance. I'm selling my soul. I felt like I didn't have any personality. I didn't have any uniqueness. I'm trying to fit in, right? And it worked in a way. I had these cool friends. And they were, looking back, they were pretty good kids until they got into partying and cocaine and guns and all this, crazy stuff. When you live in a small town, a lot of times that's what happens. That's where it goes. We weren't sheltered. The group of friends that I hung out with, we all didn't have dads, right? I thought it was cool. We had some great times, some of the best times of my life, hands down. The most, nostalgic times. Those what's the word for it? Halcyon days of youth or whatever. I had a lot of those days, man. I really did. I'm thankful for that. I'm really blessed for that. A lot of people have really miserable lives growing up. They're stuck in some room in some condo somewhere, and I experienced that too for a little while. I lived with this narcissistic woman. I moved in with my brother. This is right before I left the Matrix. I moved to a different city, moved in with my brother, and he had this narcissistic woman he was living with, and her son was on all kinds of drugs, and he went to mental hospitals and stuff. And it's because there's no love. There's no reality in this woman's life. All she cares about is money, and a lot of kids grow up like that. And I'm glad I had some great times. But again, I still was selling my soul to live in that blue pill matrix. I still was selling my soul to fit in, to conform, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't have any unique identity. I had to find myself. And how I did that was I stepped outside of the matrix. I stopped trying to fit in. I stopped trying to conform. I stopped trying to have friends. Hey, if you want to call me, I'll be your friend, and we can work something out. I started looking for things in other people that were deeper than just conformity, that were deeper than just this groupthink type of mentality, right? Anyway, long story short, the Matrix is really a metaphor for being born again. It really is, because you can't really leave them. You can take the red pill and you can get outside of the Matrix, psychologically, but until you're really born again, you're going to be living in that world system. From one level to a different. Maybe you're not as deep as other people. Maybe you're not as dependent as other people on the system. As Morpheus was talking about, right? How people are so helplessly dependent on it, and that's what these verses are talking about, man. That's what these verses are talking about. Let me just go back and read these again, because this whole chapter 18 of Revelation, is insanely eye-opening. After these things, I saw another angel coming down out of heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illumined with his glory. Now, this is talking about the end times, by the way. That's what the book of Revelation is all about, is the end times. Meaning when this world, current world that we're living in, actually ends, and God comes back to end it. And he cried with a strong voice, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, and she has become a dwelling place of demons, and a hold of every unclean spirit, and a hold of every unclean and hateful bird." There's evil out here, man. There's evil in this world, right? The demons used to be angels, and so did Satan. They were serving God, and they rebelled against God, and that's how they become demons. It's just part of the story. It's all in Genesis, right? And these demons and Satan, they influence people to do evil things. This world is evil. If you don't believe there's evil on this earth, you're just not going outside. You're not opening your eyes. There's evil. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the fury of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the power of her luxury. Now, this is something that, when I was going through that stage of leaving the Matrix, taking the red pill and opening my mind up to what this world is really all about, it wasn't just like about girls. It wasn't just like about money. It was the whole thing. Like, what are we actually doing here? And I found the answers in the Bible. The Bible tells us that this earth is run by Satan, this cosmos that we live in, this world system, political, financial, religious. It's influenced and really behind the scenes run by Satan. It's run by evil people who are followers of Satan. This system that we live in, we think it's a great system, but really it's not. It's oppressive, right? Whether it's communism, capitalism, theism, atheism, any of these isms, they're all oppressive to the human soul. Man was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden serving God. That's what we're made for. It's like Descartes. I think it's Descartes, the great philosopher, says. It might be somebody else. It might be Nietzsche. Anyway, one of those guys, one of those great philosophers has a quote that says, "There's a God-sized hole in every man that can only be filled with God. It can't be filled up with partying, with pleasure, with all these other things that we seek, which are temporary. Those things might please us temporarily." And I had a lot of those temporary times. But like I said, those guys, they didn't really love me. They weren't really my friends. I mean, they were my friends, but they didn't. A lot of it was topical. They didn't really care about me, like really, really care, like somebody who really loves you. I think that somebody who cares in that way can really only do so if they have God. And like I said in the last video, suffering produces character. Right? Suffering produces character. So a lot of people who haven't, and a lot of those friends that I had, a lot of them were just these kind of kids that I was talking about. They never had any bad times in their life. A lot of people out here just are selfish. They just don't give a crap about anyone but themselves and their own happiness. And they're even experts and professionals at making themselves happy. Right? Oh yeah, I'll just go hang out with this girl, hang out with these guys. They make themselves happy. This is what people do on earth. They make themselves happy. But yet there's this backdrop of the Matrix, right? That picture in the movie The Matrix, where these robots are essentially just controlling these people, psychologically. They got this tube in the back of their head, right? Well, this is what's going on in this world today, in this cosmos. People are being controlled, and this verse talks about it. This is a system. It's a satanic system. And there's tiers and levels to it, right? There's the political level, the financial level, the government level, the social, cultural level. All these levels are ways, methods, and means to control people, right? And really, what's the essential goal there? To control them. Keep them away from God. In the Bible, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the reality." I am the way, the truth, and the reality. He says that in the book of John. You can Google it. By the way, you can Google any of the stuff that I'm saying. It's all true. It's all real. I've studied all this stuff, so I know what I'm talking about, right? In the book of John, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the reality. If anyone wants to come to the Father, he must come through me first." That's Jesus Christ saying that, right? He's the real truth in this universe. Christ is, Jesus, and it's not that, what does that mean? Jesus is the truth. Does that just mean that we need to worship the picture of Jesus? No, it means that he himself is the reality and embodiment of all the truth that we see. We see, we read something and we're like, yeah, that's really true. Well, Jesus is the reality of that truth, right? The reason why that truth is there is because Jesus said it, because Jesus was behind it. Right? Meaning all the truths, the general universal truths that we know in this life, Jesus is the reality of those things, right? All the wisdom, everything we see and know, and even the reality of love is God. The reality of what between right and wrong is God. right? Because you take away God from those equations and you will have confusion. This is why atheists are such confused people. They're people who have no morals, no scruples. They have no anchor, no rudder to direct them in life, because when you take away God, you remove truth, reality, love, morals. You remove all that and nothing matters. So there's a lot of people out there who just, they're kind of living a void life. You know, and I say this because I really want to encourage people. It's not that I'm preaching the gospel or preaching God per se. I would approve of that. I would approve of that message. But I'm saying this because a lot of times, I read that guy's comment, and a lot of times there's so many people out here who are just lost, and I don't think everybody's going to choose God in the church and stuff like that. But I just want to encourage you, let you know that this is a world system, that the world system that we're in is not, it's nothing that's based on love. It's nothing that's based on reality and truth. It's something that is based on a lie. It's something that is based on exploitation of human souls, right? For real. It's something that's based on the oppression of human souls, which is what it talks about in these verses. So let me go on. For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the fury of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich by the power of her luxury. Again, this describes the world system. All the finances, all the money, that's what this describes. All the people who are profiting in a greedy way. And I heard another voice out of heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you do not participate in her sins and that you do not receive her plagues. So judgment's coming. God's going to judge it. God's going to judge this world system. For her sins have accumulated up to heaven, and God has remembered her unrighteousness. That's a lot of sinning. Think about it. Think about how high away the heavens are. Heavens is just like space and beyond, even beyond space. So imagine how much when he uses that word here, accumulated. Let's look at the footnote real quick. Let's see what the footnote. Oh, okay, it means joined together. Well, yeah, accumulated, joined together. All right. So we think of that word accumulated, we think of something that is joined together, something that is piled up per se. So the sins on the earth have piled up to heaven. That's what that verse means. For her sins have accumulated up to heaven. All the sins of the earth are so much in magnitude. And we're talking lying, cheating, stealing, murder, theft, adultery, fornication, lust, greed, envy, sloth, jealousy, all these negative things which we can obviously objectively say are quote unquote sins, right? Wrong things that hurt people, all these things throughout all the history of Babylon, which is basically since Adam and Eve got kicked out of the Garden of Eden, because that's when the first Babylon, which is the first city, or the city of Cain, which later became Babylon. But, it's a long history in the book of Genesis. But all those sins have accumulated up to heaven. And again, think about how high heaven is, right? We're on the earth. We can see the quote-unquote heavens, the stars and the clouds. We can see it. But you don't realize how extremely high that is. And not only that, I believe the heavens here refers to beyond just our atmosphere. Into space, I think is even in the Bible, what heavens means in the Bible. So that's a lot of sinning, man. That's a lot. I mean, think about how many sins you commit every day. Probably small sins. You might curse, which is a sin. You might get mad or angry, which is a sin. You might yell at somebody in your car and say, "Hey, F you, why don't you, go faster," or something. That's a sin. That's anger. That's right. But imagine the bigger sins as well on the whole earth. How much that is, that's a lot, right? Anyway, so I think that verse really just exposes how corrupt this place is. We have a concept in our mind. We think the earth is so great, because Michael Jordan lives here, and Picasso, lived here, and, Mark Twain or Shakespeare, all these great writers, and it's such a high and noble thing to be a human. And, we got to live up to. It's nah, man. This earth is corrupt. This place is funky, okay? And if you don't know that, you got to wake up to that. It'll help you out in life, because I've been through that where I was so down because this guy's succeeding and I could be doing so much better and I could have so much more money and I could have this girl or this, that, and I could have a better car. All these things that I wanted, these material things, because this is what the earth has to offer. Oh, success. How many motivating videos out there are there for success? Be successful. What about just being content with who you are? What about that? What about living in today, living in the moments? So much joy and happiness was robbed from me because I was trying to better myself, because I was putting off happiness until I achieved this or achieved that. This is the earth that we live in, full of sins, full of distractions, full of things that hurt our soul, right? All right, let me go on. I got to hurry up and finish this. Pay her back even as she has paid, and double to her double according to her works. And the cup which she has mixed to her double. As much as she has glorified herself and lived luxuriously, as much torment and sorrow give to her. For she says in her heart, I sit a queen, and I am not a widow, and I shall by no means see sorrow. Therefore in one day her plagues will come, death and sorrow and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for the Lord God who judges her is strong. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament over her when they see the smoke of her burning. So all these people, all these guys who are so successful and all that, all their security and confidence and joy, their whole soul is what's going on on earth, and what they've established and what they've built up for themselves. And when they see that system burning, when God comes back and judges it and burns it in one day, 1 hour even, I think it says, they're going to weep and they're going to cry, because they know that they've been dispossessed. All that they have and all their confidence and all their homes and their materials and all these things that they have is going to be gone in an instant, because God judged it. You see, and it's not that God is judging them per se, it's that God is judging the source of that system and the unrighteousness of the foundation and fabric of that system, right? So there's a lot of people out here who are successful and seemingly happy, and maybe they are really genuinely happy, but their happiness and their confidence, is based in a corrupt system, is based on a system that's really not equal for everybody, based on a system that's really not based in love or righteousness. It's based on a system that is fundamentally, predatory, fundamentally exploitative of human souls even. I'm going to get into that in a minute because it talks about that here in a second. But very evil system. So don't look at these people out here and think, oh, this guy's so happy. Like, don't envy these people. Don't envy these people, They're so happy and they got all these nice things and blah, blah, blah. And it's going to be gone in an instant, first of all. Second of all, that's their only joy. They don't have anything else besides that. All they got is their little wicked happiness, accumulating selfish desires, look at me, I got my great husband. Look at me, I got my great wife. Look at me, I got my great house, and I got my this and that. But they don't really have love. They're not really good people on the inside. Those are the people who are going to weep, because the system that they were so reliant on, that they had confidence in, is going to be gone, burned up, because they didn't put their confidence in God. The Bible says, store it for yourselves treasures in heaven, and your reward will be great. It says, do not store it for yourselves treasures on the earth, where moths and rust, come in and decay your material possessions. That's right there in the book of Matthew. Jesus says that. It's right there in the Gospels. So if we have our treasure in heaven, then when this whole place burns, when this whole earth is consumed with fire in 1 hour, we're going to rejoice if our treasure's in heaven, because this is over. This matrix is over. This suffering, oppressive system that we live in is over, right? So this is part of how to deal with suffering and setbacks. Understand that it's temporary. Understand that a lot of these people who seemingly so happy and make us feel worthless, they're not really that happy. And all their treasures are not in heaven. All right, I got to hurry and finish this up because my battery's going to die. Standing afar, okay. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn over her, because no one buys her cargo anymore. This is the part I really want to talk about. Cargo of gold and silver and precious stone and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and every kind of thyine wood and every vessel of ivory and every vessel of most precious wood, brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and amomum and incense and ointment and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and cattle and sheep and cargo of horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. So it mentions all this stuff in kind of a, fractionary English statement kind of way, where he's just, he could mention anything, but he's mentioning all these things to give you an idea right? The writer of the book of Revelation was the Apostle John, who also wrote, the Gospel of John, right? But he says all these things to give you an idea of, just a general idea that there's so much on this earth. There's so many material possessions and material things. And it's just a general kind of way to say this, but all these things, but I want to really pay attention to this part right here where it says, and chariots and slaves and souls of men. And let's look on this footnote. Souls of men. Okay, of the cargo sold by Babylon, the first item is gold and the last is souls of men. Souls of men refers to men who sell themselves for employment. This depicts not only the coming Babylon, but also today's world. People sell their soul, their life, that is themselves, to their occupation, neglecting God and their eternal destiny. They sell their souls literally for occupation. Think about it. That's what all these people are doing out here. They have this 9 to 5. What are they doing? They're selling their soul. Because all their energy, all that they have in their soul is going into staying alive, going into this, work, going into this career, going into this bill paying mode, right? And it sucks all your energy away. It takes your soul from you, eventually. This is why everybody wants to be rich, because they want to beat that. Right? And that system, that system is taking people's souls in the same way that the movie The Matrix, these robots were sucked. People were really slaves. I like to use that word, slaves, right? These people are slaves. They become slaves. This is what it is in today's world. People sell their soul, their life, themselves, their occupation, neglecting God and their eternal destiny. What should be our eternal destiny? Living forever with God. This is what the Bible says. Read the Bible, man. It's an amazing book. So yeah, man, I wanted to say that because this chapter 18 of Revelation really, really describes how the earth is usurped, and it's under the tyranny, of the devil, basically. And so, don't envy these people out here. Don't think that they're better than you. Don't, I wish that, I could be like them, and, things like that. Nah, man, don't, because they've really sold their souls. They might seem happy. Oh, he's got a boat. Oh, he might be happy. Really. Maybe his work doesn't really hurt him that much. He comes home and everything's good, and he's got the wife and the kids and woo, and, but eventually, he's going to have to answer to God. People are going to have to answer to God. Even if you are happy, like, I don't think a lot of people are happy out there. Some people are. A lot of people just don't even have energy. They just, go to work, come home, and at least I got this house. I got to work, so I got this house. I got to work, so I get my retirement, right? They might not be that happy, but even if they are, it's like, you can't take it with you. At the most, you get 70 years. Okay, you get this little blip of happiness, and you feel like it's all good, and you did your job, and I had kids, and so I feel all this, I'm here, I did my thing, and I've got love and you think you got love and happiness, maybe. But if you don't got God, do you really have love and happiness? Maybe. But I remember before I had God and how I experienced friendship and love and all that, and it's pretty shallow. Now, I'm not saying there's no love in marriage and things like that. I'm sure there is. But it's hard to believe that that's the love of God, right? So one of the things that I want to advise is to keep things in perspective, right? If you're trying to dealing with suffering, sorrow, and setbacks, keep things in perspective, right? Understand that this world is relative. Everything's relative, right? Somebody might not be suffering as bad as you, but they're suffering in their own way, right? Not only that, there's a lot of people out there who you think are super happy and they're really not that happy. But even if they are happy, even if they are content and feel great about their life, eventually they're going to have to answer to God. Eventually this place is going to burn down and God's going to make things equal again. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of the Bible, is to end the current age, end this, tyranny of oppression and sin and all these negative things, right? So the other two things I wanted to say is, in the meantime, you know, you should do your best. Try to be happy. Learn to find the small things in life. Learn to find happiness and joy in the small things of life. Make plans, set goals, write out bucket lists, write poetry, meditate in the sense that, you know, you're doing like affirmations and things like that. Meditate in the sense that you are speaking something positive into your life. Those things help, right? But ultimately, I have to confess and say the best thing in life is really the Bible, is you know, following God and things like that, because it's really the core of who we are. What complicates us is when we want these other things, and I want this kind of happiness and I want that, and this selfishness and da 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 da. But following God is really one of the most rewarding feelings I've ever felt. You know, giving my life to God, really touching God's essence, which is spirit. You know, in the you know, not only in the words of the Bible, but at church and things like that. That really, it's very deeply satisfying. It makes you happy and joyful in a very unique way. I'm not saying there's no other happiness on this earth. I'm not saying people can't be happy, find happiness in something besides God. They obviously can and do. But everything's fleeting. Everything is temporary. We're always dying. We're always, you know, we're living to die. We're dying from, you know, from the moment we're born, and until we become born again, we don't really feel alive, I believe, right? When I became born again was when I really felt alive, you know, and that happened during my red pill phase. A little bit later in my state, you know, the stage of my red pill phase, and I never felt more real, more genuine, and alive, you know. But there's a lot of suffering that comes with it. There's a lot of, the Bible's not just oh